Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Brent Keltner. Brent, welcome.
Hey, Thomas. Looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I run a company called Winalytics, which is a boutique go-to-market and revenue acceleration consultancy. We do a lot of work with sales teams, but we are very explicit in calling it go-to-market because in the current buying environment, your sales team needs to be very strongly connected to the value prop in marketing, prospecting, sales, and customer success to have a integrated buyer journey. To be able to tell a clear story to buyers about value and to be able to make those internal connections easily. So that's what we do. We work with early growth companies in the $3 to $10 million range. A lot of our work is in the kind of $10 to $30 million range. You have a form to go to market team, but people are, trying to paint a trajectory towards going public. And then we do work with enterprise sales teams as well.
Okay, so I do want to ask you about the book, but just point of clarification. When someone comes to you, what is it they typically ask for? What does that look like?
Yeah, the number one thing, and then I'll give you number two. Number one is they recognize that their selling motion and their marketing motion is too product focused, that they're not differentiating themselves. They're leaving money on the table. They're not really connecting with their buyer because they're going out and they're selling their product rather than selling into either business outcome or business value or strategic selling. Some people will have that initiative, really thinking about your marketing and sales motion, always leading with what's my buyer's why? What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, in terms of how you go about helping them, is it like consulting, or do you get involved and implement on their behalf?
No, it's more consulting. I mean, we have historically did a lot of fractional sales leadership, fractional outreach, but the goal was always just to do consulting. So now it's pure consulting.
Okay, and what was the second category of people?
Yeah, the second is kind of the recognition. I mean, maybe they've done a decent job of starting to capture their value. They have success stories. They're capturing outcomes, whether that's around, revenue or around cost savings or a better user experience or scaling their assets. They might be doing that, but they're aware that the consistency in execution around value selling, it's inconsistent. And it can be inconsistent for a couple of reasons. One is that the go-to-market teams aren't well connected. What is on the website and what sales said, or the prospecting to sales handoff, or the sales to success handoff, there's not good alignment there. And that's not good for the customer or the buyer experience. And then within teams, right, once you get to a certain size, you got a team of 5. I mean, literally, you're going to have a top performer or two, and then you're going to have people in the middle. And so a lot of the work we do with any team, sales team, customer success, prospecting team, is how do you capture the best practices of the top 20% in playbooks to then bring everybody's game up to that top 20%, move the middle 60 towards your top performers by capturing their practices, socializing it to the team, and then having opportunities for individual practice and just sharpening the sword.
Thank you for the breakdown. It does make me think, because correct me if I'm wrong, you're opposed to people selling the products based on their features, if you will. What do you make of those channels on TV where they're strictly only selling products 100% of the time? I forget what the channel is called now, but I'm sure you'd know it.
Yeah, and just to be clear, because people will raise that concern all the time. And the point is, you have a product, you have a service that you're selling 100%. The point is to map your product or service to your buyer's problem. So any product or service
they're quite good at that, then you would say.
Who is quite good at that?
The TV channels that only pitch products 24/7.
I guess I would say I think, and this goes to the whole debate about product-driven growth, right, for B2B companies. I think honestly, you can often with a lower value product, often the need it meets is a lot more obvious. And, people without having to think a lot can say, yes, I'll buy that. So if you're selling leads for $500 a pop, or you're selling some kind of single seat workflow software, and somebody has a problem around managing their group, right? Or managing a software, and they can put a credit card in for $300 and get a seat. You don't need spend a lot of time on anchoring value. That is a much more product led, and totally understand. We get involved sometimes with product driven growth companies that you hit a wall, right? Is okay, what happens when it's not a credit card swap and I actually have to build a case to the person I'm selling to sell to their manager? How do I do that? A product feature isn't going to make a case to my manager. So I think two things. One is that, you can lead with your product to a certain transaction point, no problem. And two is, in the method we teach, it's not that you're not going to sell your product, but you're going to link it to a specific buyer goal. And I think in a lot of the channels, the QVC, et cetera, it's like the problem it's solving for you is obvious. Saving time in your day.
Was the one I was looking for that I've forgotten about. Past a point of value, you would say, or past a certain price, you would need a value narrative, is what the book's about. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%.
So would you like to go into a little bit about the book and how it was to write it?
I was trained as an academic and made a transition into revenue leadership. So writing for me was natural, but I was trained as an academic, so I was a very analytical writer, clunky, thick. And I had an awesome book coach, a guy named David Meerman Scott, probably in name, maybe familiar to you, wrote the New Rules of PR and Marketing, Fanocracy, and a bunch of others. And he really did an awesome job of shifting my writing style to make it more story and narrative driven. He would say to me, Brenda, hey, these frameworks are great, but it's putting me to sleep. Can we start with a story to motivate why that is meaningful, why people should pay attention? And the other thing he said is, when you write for a business audience, you're the expert. So get rid of all these sites, or use them to support your opinion. But, you're putting me to sleep. So writing came naturally to me. The style of writing was completely new. And that took a long time to figure out.
Now about the length. So some people, they're very sort of highly productive, get it out there and don't worry too much about being a perfectionist, if you will. And some people agonize over every sentence. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Well, it's interesting because I was just on with a woman who is beginning the process of writing a book. And basically I advised her, write a 180-page book and get it done. And get your ideas out there and get the credit for being an expert in your area. My book is a beast. It's 380 pages. Now there's 60 pages of call outs, but it's still 325 pages. And I probably could have taken the last two chapters and put it into the next book. So I think I err on what you said, to get it out there, chunk out your ideas. I have been doing this for 20 years and now, I'm on the right side of momentum, right? There's 15 to 20% of go-to-market leaders that get what we do and understand that it's the right thing to do. But I've been laboring for years to kind of just do it this way and get people to say, yeah. And so I had a lot to say.
Why did you write it?
I wrote it exactly that. I literally transitioned into, I left academics. I was trained at Stanford. I worked at the Rand Corporation as a qualitative researcher. I left in about 2002, came and joined Kaplan in their higher education group to lead a B2B team. I leveraged the academic credential. It was online degrees, and I was going to corporations and selling into L&D. And so I've been part of this odyssey. I had a way of selling that was successful for me. And then I had that and 3 more experiences. I go-to-market leader, leading sales team, and very quick growth successes. Because I would just teach them what I had learned, which is always structure your outreach, always structure your calls on what's in it for your buyer. where do I have similar, they call it now lookalike, pure success stories that kind of build confidence for them. And so I found a way of selling that not only makes you a lot more successful, but honestly, it's just a much better way of selling. I mean, to the point about ethical marketing, you feel like, look, I'm looking for a fit. I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not trying to sell you something or force something down your throat. I'm just trying to find a fit. And so you just feel better and you learn from your conversations. And I want to get that message to a lot more people. There is a better way to make more money, honestly, and enjoy your job a lot more and have much more harmonious relationships with your buyers and customers.
So would you say you noticed a problem that you're providing a solution to?
100%. I would say it bigger than that. Yes, problem, providing solution to. I would put it, I think, at a category of noticed a big market shift that needed to be addressed. And the big market shift, and you live this, we all live this, we are all overwhelmed with information. The amount of noise coming at us from our emails, social media, LinkedIn, right? The prospecting campaigns, peer review sites, whatever it is. There's so much information out there. And so really to be successful in marketing and selling now, you have to begin as a trusted advisor. You have to begin with, we solve important problems. These are people we solve problems for. Are you working on any of those? Could we find some time to discuss it? Could we find a match? So that problem's not going away, right? It's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, that the way you engage buyers early on and through the process has to be all about what's in it for them, how you can make their life easier, how you can help them to a better future, the whole motion, everything, content, prospecting, selling, all has to be anchored on that, not about you, your product, your experience, your process. All of those will just kill your, prospecting velocity, your deal velocity.
And as a result of writing the book, have you changed any of the way that you do business, or any tactics that, as a result of going through that process of putting it down and into?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it honestly, as I kidded, but it was true. I had a lot to say. I've worked on every phase of go-to-market, right, from the content to the prospect. And so what it really helped to do was modularize that and make it a little bit more digestible, right? So now, I mean, if I'm talking with a leader, I mean, there's a company called Mainstay that I've worked with a couple of years ago and now re-engaging around their next level of growth. They're sort of a $12 million company. And when I started with them, they were 2 or 3. And so you can have a conversation around, okay, what are you doing to be more intentional in prospecting across the enterprise, across the campus and university, right? There are multiple buyer roles. Do you have a platform value prop that can inform that? So do we want to work on prospecting? Or is it about sales now? As you roll up and have a higher enterprise value, do your sales teams have the right skills to qualify to the right buying group and kind of build alignment around a success statement? Or is it in the sales to success handoff? There's not really a good process for then during the implementation and the ongoing QBRs to surface new goal areas, right? To identify other areas of platform value props. So the book really helped to say, we've got overall value playbooks. We usually build those in about a month, but then there are really like 4 other playbooks for every phase of the go-to-market journey. What do you want to focus on? What revenue outcomes are most important for you to make the quickest progress on?
And have you got a favorite part of the book that you're particularly proud of?
I think the opening. The 2, I would say, the opening chapter, I tell a story about buying when I moved to Boston to work with Kaplan and buying a condo. And I worked with 2 realtors. And the first one, it was just like every Saturday, it was just a race through condo after condo after condo of like going through the checklist, right? Hardwood floor, 2nd bedroom, blah, blah, blah. It was just a blur to me. And I describe that as, that's to me the classic product pitch. She was just throwing stuff out there to see if it stuck. The second one, really was much more thoughtful. She started with, hey, tell me about your favorite living situations in the past that you want to repeat, and what do you not want. And after we did a weekend together where we went to 3 very different condos just to kind of debrief, hey, what did you like and what didn't you like? And so her whole focus was, what is your ideal outcome? What's your ideal condo? What's your ideal living situation? It was a much more pleasurable experience. I got a great condo. She made a great commission. So I opened with that very personal experience that most people can relate to on the difference between product pitching and a more authentic journey. So that was one chapter I really like. And then the very first chapter, I tell a story about Immersion, which was a client for a couple of years. They have an immersive VR technology that helps with soft skills training. So leadership or diversity and inclusion or service or sales. And I compare it with an actual company that's given a fictitious name, Salento, and go through. I mean, Immersion is now like a gazelle, right? Is on the Forbes and Fortune top growth lists. I mean, they're going to push 50 million. This other company's probably at 5 or 6 million, started at the same time around this, and able to tell the story about how Immersion, this commitment to, selling into buyer value at every phase. I mean, Salento's website, you just go and you're like, it's about their product awards, their company. At Immersion, literally the homepage is around, hey, how are you thinking about scaling leadership? How are you making a more inclusive environment? So just asking you questions about problems you're solving. And then at the bottom is, do you want to join our peer community? Whether you're a client or not, do you want to join our peer community to learn how to solve these problems? So they very well put themselves there's an important market problem. We're at the hub of solving that. Do you want to be part of it? As opposed to, hey, this is about us and our product. And so I think it's just a great way to open, again, in a company story now with these 2 different trajectories and the results they lead to.
Thank you for that. If, say, for example, someone from Salento was listening to the podcast today, other than buying the book, what would you say the first few steps are for them if they wanted to move away from it's all about us and our product to something a little bit more, not sure how you describe it, more the customer focused?
Yeah, we talk about it as an authentic buyer journey or authentic conversations. It really anchors on what they care about first. But then I'll say, I mean, for us, you start by giving, right? What do they care about the most? But in an authentic conversation, it's not just about being a nice person. You got to get something back, right? To be able to move forward together. So it's, what do you care about? Do we have fit? And if we have fit, are you willing to do things about it as well? You confirm value by taking actions to move forward. So that's one thing, right? Shift your mindset to a couple of mindset shifts. Is it's not about you first, it's about you being a buyer problem solver. So it's about your buyer. But the second is, salespeople often think about, what do? I do a call, I send a proposal, I do a demo to the team. You got to think about, what am I getting back after I found a match? Right? It's a mutual process. It's not my process. It's a mutual process. So I think that's one key mindset shift. The other, just simply, and people ask all the time, well, this sounds complicated. How do you get started? And we just say, think about it this way. If you're in sales or you're in customer success, you know your best customers. In sales, because you use them for your references, right? When you're selling to other similar customers, and customer success, because you work with them all day long and you know who's really using the product well and excited about it. Ask them what they got out of using their product. What was the before and after case for them? And if you do that, I'll just give you a really simple example with a company called TrueFit, which is a retail personalization platform. So Macy's is a client, and if you go to Macy's website, you can put in information about yourself, your stature, et cetera, and you can get recommendations on size and style fits. And so Greg Carter, who is the VP of sales for North America and ANZ, I guess that's Australia, New Zealand. He talked about as we debriefed a success story there, like our team, like most teams, gets excited about our own innovation. And so we wanted to pitch this transformational product with all this data and all this matching. At the end of the day, the buyer was trying to solve a problem. So when they started to tell stories about Macy's or Moose Jaw, or really this was about when they used it, they saw returns drop by 20%. Or they saw the number of people coming to the website that were browsers converting to buyers at a much higher rate. That's why they re-upped. That's why they became a recommender. So asking your buyers, what was the problem? We had a big problem with returns after we worked with you. That started to go away. We didn't get size-related returns. Asking your buyers to tell you what was their situation, how did you solve it, and was there any simple result? I mean, just that simple. Ask 2 or 3.
Is there any good substitute for that one-to-one conversation? Or does it have to be that dialogue that you have with the client? The context of the question is just about, if you're not 100% sure on what it is that really drives the buyer, what do you then do?
Yeah, I mean, so couple other things you can do. One is, a lot of calls are recorded these days, obviously, with Gong and other similar technologies. If you listen closely for those calls and go in with your own hunches about why buyers buy, you can get a lot of information that, we've seen a number of marketing and product teams, they use those calls to kind of build their own roadmap, right? For content or for product innovation, if you just listen to a smattering of people in a certain industry or a certain role. So that is, you can build your own hypothesis and go listen. How do your customers talk about working with you, and what do they say, when they don't know you're listening, as a great approach. The other thing you can do, we talk about, we use a story, actually I mentioned Mainstay, so it's a good example, or Torchlight would be another one, which is a caregiver platform. They work with companies. It's a company benefit, but it basically helps that 50% plus of employees that are often have an elderly parent and a child they're taking care of. Often a child, may have some type of learning disabilities, or developmental things that they're working on. And we work with them on shifting from kind of more of a spray and pray model of prospecting, just sending out high volume emails, to what we call programmatic prospecting, which is, hey, go to 100 or 200 contacts at a time in a similar role with a specific theme. Is this about employee time on task, right? That if they're distracted with those, issues, they're not going to be as productive. Or is it about engaging high talent employees and making sure they stay, particularly women, right, that might exit the workforce because of some of these issues? You want to retain them, you want to put them on a management path. So design your campaigns and the content assets and the stories you share around those themes. Run campaign tests, use every campaign as a market test, and figure out, where's your uptake rate the highest? Where do you get the most engagement? Where do you get the most meetings? And do those convert? And so that process with them, it would very clear sectoral patterns. Professional services, right? Totally on the recruitment and retainment for high value employees. Manufacturing, I mean, maybe not a surprise after the fact, it's time on task, right? Letting people better focus on their work. So that's a third thing. You can ask customers directly. You can listen to recorded calls. You can also do your own kind of prospecting tests to try and learn from the market.
It's a great point. In terms of misconceptions, are there any main ones about the topic?
I think one I alluded to, well, two, you hit on one, is people react to, when I say, buyer goals first, product second, people react badly, like, well, we're selling a product, right? People buy a product. And that is one. And we just say all the time, look, any product other than these very simple transactional ones you can sell on QVC, usually they solve multiple problems. And so people will say, well, I show up and they say, show me a demo, show me a demo, show me a demo. How do I be responsive to that? Buyer centric. And we just say, very simply, it's like, look, I could show you 100 things and you will probably fall asleep. So could we just spend a few minutes understanding what you care about the most? And then I'll give you a very targeted walk through our product to see if it can help you. So the pivot is, yes, you want to sell your product, but you want to link it to something your buyer cares about a lot. So that's one is, yes, it's about the product, but it's about mapping your product to what your buyer values. I think the second is this idea of being authentic, is like, oh, I'm just going to be really helpful and kumbaya with the world. And I honestly think it's about the pursuit of truth. Just trying to find a match, right? I'm being intentional with you about the problems we solve. You're being clear with me about what you care about most. And if we find a match, what steps will you take to solve for those? We, as part of the growth of our own business, are looking for a learning platform to facilitate. We do a lot of team-based training sessions and then individual coaching. And so we use Google Drives or shared docs to socialize and share plays and playbooks. And we want to, in 2022, move that to a social learning platform, right? So people could, we'll just put it in a social learning platform. So I was on with a guy from Seismic yesterday. They have a Lessonly. And we literally, in 10 minutes, he was like, I think I understand your goal. Is this your goal? Right? To serve, like, white label it and serve your clients. And I was like, yes. And he's like, yeah, we don't do that. I'm not going to try and take you any further down the path, but here are a couple of clients that I know do. And if you find people that are working on this technology, I'd appreciate the referral.
There's one thing I wanted to ask you about. Questions around definitions are often tough, but I did want to ask you about your definition of authenticity. But is it what you referred to initially, which is your wording? Was it the pursuit of truth? Is that how you define it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you preempted me there.
So I preempted you, and to put a finer point on it, I mean, there are 3 phases to an authentic conversation for us that lead to a better outcome, and honestly, just more enjoyment of your work. The first is we talk about value discovery, and it's not just questions, it's getting to what would be success for your buyer in working with you. So Immersion, right, when we started to work with them, is they had this transformational product, and people were wowed by the demo, but they would literally go 4 demos without having any idea if they had a buyer on the other side. So the purpose of value, so what they just shifted a little bit, their motion, start with a demo so people can see it and you don't have to do it over. But then the question is there any critical leadership training initiatives? Is there any critical learning and development initiative this could point towards? DE&I. Is there any CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer, initiative this could align to? So here's the product. Can you tell me where it could be most valuable to you? Where are you having trouble scaling soft skills training? Where are you having trouble reinforcing that? So value discovery, for us, the good discovery, it gets to a buyer success statement. Your buyer can say to you, yes, this is what I see, how we might work together and what it would solve. So that value discovery. Second phase is value mapping. I don't bore my buyers. What I just said is when I share my stories, when I share my experience, it all, if you can't begin a product presentation with, I heard you say, and therefore I'm going to show you this, you're still product pitching. So when you show your product, you should be able to refer directly back to what your buyer cares about. And then the third phase, we could talk about it as value confirmation, or the decision roadmap is what will your buyer do about it? If your buyer agrees that we have this alignment, so go back to the Immersion case, okay, so you're having trouble scaling DE&I training across all of your site locations. That's very important to your VP of HR. And matter of fact, your CEO has a diversity initiative this could align to, and you see we could help scale that. Did I hear that correctly? Yes, okay. Typically for us, we're going to need to have a call where we get a business unit owner involved, as well as the VP that's probably going to fund this, or whoever's going to fund it. And it's also helpful just to know what your timeline is in terms of when this becomes a priority. So can you share with me how you're thinking about the steps, next steps, and then overall the steps to a partnership? What actions would you need to take to know we're able actually moving down the path together? It's honesty on both sides.
Good. Regarding the promotion of the book, how has that been and what have you been doing?
Yeah, so started about maybe in October, just doing podcast tour. The next two phases, we'll start our press campaign in a couple of weeks. So just looking for press citations and byline articles. And then the next phase after that is starting to do some speaking. We'll start with some probably sales kickoff meetings with corporations. I am going to a public speaking course for the first half of this year to build, and this course they teach you how to give a keynote, and then they record it, and then you use that to promote yourself further. So we'll start with corporate friendlies, and then ideally move into event speaking. And then the fourth thing I'll say is we are, with current and past clients, going to form what we call it an authenticity wins group. It will be a peer learning group. People that are bought into these practices will probably have a monthly webinar. We do a lot of video recording of how people put plays in practice. So honestly, and this is going to sound a little bit arrogant or vainglorious maybe, but I have been convicted that I want to lead a movement around this, right? Got a small consulting company, but a lot of believers. And we will get from 15% to 30% by getting a lot of people working together to say, this is the right way to go. So like Immersion, trying to put ourselves at the center of a like-minded community that's doing great work.
So we're going to see you on TEDx at some point then?
Maybe. I'm honestly just, the corporate talks are the next hurrah for me. I'm a skilled facilitator. I've been doing it for years, have natural skills there. I'm not a great public speaker. Never have been in a big format. And so I'll need to build that skill, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Well, congratulations on, were you an author before this, or is it, how many books?
I wrote a dissertation. I did have an opportunity to publish that, but I was coming out of Stanford, and the press wasn't prestigious enough, so I did not. So no, not a published author yet.
Well, congratulations regardless. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
I think only folks will ask sometimes, like, so how can people get more information about the book? And I always say we have set up a book website, authenticitywins.com. If you go to the website, you can download the foreword by David Meerman Scott and chapter 1 for free. Or they, if they're interested, they can come to winalytics.com, winalytics.com. There is a book website, or they can find out more about us. So those are the two things I usually add.
Brilliant. Brent, thank you very much for your time and for sharing today.
Thomas, really enjoyed the call. Thank you for the time.